And it's time to go live. Well, it's just me and Michael in the audience, so there's not a lot of people today. Let's give it a bit of a moment to see if that'll change, and if not, it'll be a fast stream. That's okay. I kind of did like to talk about politics anyway, so it's a good thing, even if it's going to be a short stream. There's something seriously wrong with our society. But I said I'd wait, so I'll give it a few minutes. See if other people will join us. You can hear me breathe. Well, maybe the microphone is turned on to how do you call that? Nope, nothing I can change there. Yeah, I'm more than willing to believe you, but I don't really see how I can change the setting on that one. And a grand total of 3 people now. Hi there, Paolo. Good to see you, mate. And you know what? Let's just get started, because I wanted to talk to you today about politics. Now, obviously, that's clear considering the background I'm using now. There's an old joke. How do you know when a politician is lying? Now, obviously, most of the people here know the joke, but for the few of them that don't, you can tell a politician is lying because his lips are moving and sound comes out of his mouth. And it's not fair. I know there are plenty of good politicians. I have a problem naming one, but I'm pretty sure there are some. But yeah, somehow it always turns out that they will push their own lie. I was live before I said I was going live. Oh, that's weird. That really is weird. Thank you for letting me know. I'll have it cut by the time I am able to change the stream. No, because well, my bad then. I'm sorry for that. Now, why did I say how come we still follow our politicians? This is something that has been said by the founding fathers in the UK. No, not in the UK. United States, sorry. And it has been said by one of the politicians in the Netherlands a long time ago, and our previous Prime Minister basically repeated that not too long ago. And that's that if you want a society to be safe and you want it to be governed well, you can't have a safe society. And why can't you have a safe society? Because everyone in that society needs to feel the urge to stand up and oppose once a democracy becomes a tyranny. And somehow when people think about tyrannies, they think about Hugo Chavez or what's the one from Cuba? I'm really crap with names, I'm sorry. Or Mao Zedong. And the funny part is, yeah, sure, they were tyrannies as well. But let's be honest. Let's look at Germany, where Merkel has been the prime minister for quite some time. No, it's called different there, but yeah, she's been a leading figure for quite some time. And people won't really think of what she's doing as a tyranny. But if you would ask people of the AFD, for example, they might be more than willing to explain to you why it is a tyranny. We see the same, obviously, in the United States, where the politicians have been speaking out against the people for so long. They now have a president who openly defies the laws by saying that, yeah, sure, I can do whatever I want. And people will let him because, some people agree with him, some people do not. But the people who agree with him, well, obviously, they're the good mensch. And the people who are not agreeing with them, yeah, they're the ones that should be punished for defying. Yes, Bundeskanzlerin. Thank you, Michael. Merkel is the Chancellor of, which is a weird position to have, to be honest. But I mean, let's be honest. I'm not going to show clips, but she once was celebrating the victory of her party, and there were party members on stage which were waving small flags of Germany. And she basically took those flags away and berated those people. How dare you celebrate Germany as politicians of Germany? That's absolutely uncouth. You're not allowed to do that. But yeah, I mean, this is something we're seeing a lot in nearly all Western countries nowadays. I mean, if we look at, for example, the UK, Boris Johnson was voted in by a lot of English people to address certain points. Now, obviously, he's doing all he can with Brexit, but there are other points people who voted him for too. For example, certain crime issues within society. He's not going to go into that. Or the madness around Corona. Well, he didn't get voted in about the madness of Corona, but he's going straight against the wishes of the majority of his country. Now, not to blame him, because funny enough, if we look at it in every country in the Western world, we constantly get told how the public are behind all of the measures taken by governments to end the Corona madness. But if we look at the numbers, we can clearly see that this is not the case. Most people do not want their politicians to keep pushing for this Corona madness thing. I mean, people are scared, sure, but they don't want the way that it's being handled now to actually being handled. Most people do realize that, yeah, sure, they want safety, but they don't know how to get it, and all of a sudden it's normal to pretend that safety is something you can create by taking away the rights of other people. And how do we have a society that believes this? Well, obviously the media has a big part to play in that, but so do our politicians, because our politicians seem to think that's how it is. No, if you just, you know what, allow us to take away your rights for a short period of time, we will have the problems fixed. Well, how short is a short period of time? Well, no more than 2 weeks. Yeah, okay. They said that more than a year ago, and we're still in it now. And I would say, see, this is a problem of that country or of that country, but the truth of the matter is this is the problem of nearly all Western countries. Nearly all Western countries at roughly the same time decided that, you know what, maybe it's a good thing to take away certain rights of the people because we have to give them some safety, we have to give them some security. And the people were made scared both by politicians and the media, though maybe the media had a bigger deal in that than the politicians, fair enough. And scared people make stupid decisions. I mean, there's an old saying, never let fear guide your hand. And we did. We allowed fear to guide our hands. So we allowed our politicians to take away our rights. It would only be for 2 weeks. The longest 2 weeks in our lifetime. And there were politicians even back then that would have said we should never do this. Now, I have to admit, there weren't a lot of politicians who would say never do this, because even politicians in the opposition parties often were in favour of a short lockdown, just to see what we're up against, just to make things clear. Now, I'm not quite sure what's the cause that they try to make us be afraid as much as they did. Obviously, conspiracy theories are of the foremost idea of most people. And that might well be true. I don't know. I'm not here to peddle conspiracy theories. I'm merely here to tell you what is going on. And yeah, sure, George Soros, and yeah, sure, the World Economic Forum. You know what? That may all be true. And I might actually believe that might all be true, but that's not the point. Because George Soros and, what's his face, Klaus Schwab of the Economic Forum, or Tedros from the World Health Organization, well, bitches as they may be, they are not our leaders. We never voted for them, so why the hell are we listening to them? Well, we're listening to them because our politicians listen to them. And yeah, we may have voted for our politicians, but our politicians don't care about us. Let me see. German Health Minister Jens Spahn said in the last August, with the knowledge of today, we'd never do a lockdown. 4 weeks later, he was fighting for a new lockdown. Yeah, there you have it. Maybe politicians should issue a decree. We're still in March 2020, and it's always been March 2020. I'm all in favor of that, Paolo, because that would mean that I don't have to pay my taxes yet because we're still in last year. Now that would be a good idea, actually. And I don't know where the people are at. I think this is it. Our crowd is really small today. Then again, I haven't really been active that much, so I've only been doing live streams lately, so maybe people don't really care about coming that often anymore. Or maybe the topic is simply not interesting for them. But yeah, I mean, there are politicians out there who actually spoke against the lockdown, but still voted in favor of it. And now there are finally politicians standing up trying to open up society again. But yeah, they're failing. Why? Because even their colleagues, they don't feel the need for it. We are, in a way, in a mass psychosis. And it seems so strange. And okay, well, Corona is a terrible thing. Let's pretend that Corona is a terrible thing. I mean, it's rated an A virus, so it's rated in the same category as Ebola. Now, Ebola has a slightly higher death number than Corona. And when I say slightly, I'm ever so hyperbolic, I agree. But still, even for Ebola, we wouldn't lock down our society. How do I know we wouldn't? Well, because we never have. And did Ebola come to the Netherlands? Well, 1 or 2 cases, sure. Did Ebola go to the USA? Well, 1 or 2 cases, sure. But we dealt with it. Somehow we're not dealing with Corona. No, of course we're not dealing with Corona, because it's not about Corona. It's about the fear. Politicians and the media are feeding us lies about the fear. And the thing is, this is happening a lot. And once you start recognizing certain things, you can look back in time and say, okay, well, yeah, this has been happening a lot for quite a long time. Look, for example, and this might sound silly, but look, for example, to the United States, because that's an easy example, where when Trump was the president, he was blamed for the border housing that facilitated a place to sleep for the illegal immigrants. But under Biden, it's been way, way worse than it ever was under Trump. And Trump, when he was pointing out that it wasn't him, but he will try to change it, got ridiculed. But now, when it's happening under Biden, no one is talking about it. That's not true. A few people are. But no politicians are. Especially not the politicians that try to blame Trump for it. I'm not really sure why that's the case. I can only state that it is the case. If we look at the whole freedom of choice thing, if we look at, for example, the Georgia voting law thingy, the laws that changed in Georgia, and it's racism because you're asking people to identify themselves when casting a vote. Yeah, but how is that a weird thing? You don't want people to identify themselves when casting a vote? This is the case in every Western country in the world. And in all fairness, it's mostly the case in the United States. There are only several states that still don't allow you to do this. Georgia laws are far more lenient than the laws in, what was the place? Delaware? Why is that? Well, because Georgia isn't a democratic state. It's a contested state. Sometimes the Democrats win, sometimes the Republicans win. They don't want you to have that chance. And it's difficult to be fraudulent with votes if you have a name to every vote. Funny enough, this is why in a lot of countries you have what is called the protection of secrecy of your vote. And for a long time I always thought that was to protect you from being ostracized by your community. But in reality, it seems more likely that it's because, as long as they don't have to clarify who voted what, they can move votes around because no one is able to check it. I mean, they can literally lie to you. Basically say, oh, no, but 40% of the people voted for that person. Well, how do you know? Well, you don't. How can you check? Well, you can't because there is, the protection of secrecy of the vote. Which means you can never check if the people that voted actually voted for the person that the politicians claim they voted for. Now this brings me back to the Netherlands. In February I already knew that the VVD and D66 would be the two biggest parties in the Netherlands, even though no one had casted a vote by then. Now how come I already knew? Well, because I'm a conspiracy nut, obviously, and I know that both D66 leader Madame Alkak, or as she's known in Netherlands, Kaag. And why did I call her Alkak? Because that's her last name. But we don't seem to know that in the Netherlands. I'll come back to that later. And Prime Minister Rutte, both are contributing members of the World Economic Forum. So obviously, knowing that it's mostly World Economic Forum ideas that are being pushed right now, it was quite clear to recognize that this is why these two parties will win. Now, why do I call Madame Alkak Madame Alkak? Because that's her last name. I might pronounce it a little bit wrong, fair enough, but she's married to a Palestinian who was really close to PLO leader Arafat back in the day. And I mean, she once was removed from a position in foreign affairs in the Netherlands because she wasn't trustworthy, or she was considered not trustworthy. And now all of a sudden she may become the next Prime Minister of our country. There's a lot going on in our politics, not just in the Netherlands, not just in America, and we are blind to it. We're not paying attention to it. See, Donald Trump in America never should have happened. He was the outside candidate. They never thought he would win. He did. And then people will say, see, that's proof that they are not being fraudulent. And then I'll say, no, it's not proof that they weren't being fraudulent. They underestimated how many votes they needed to lie about. That's why Joe Biden, the president with the biggest non-campaign in the history of American politics, also has the most votes any candidate has ever had in America. He outperformed politicians that were 10 times as popular as him. Why? Well, because there's a secrecy to the vote. You don't know who voted for him, and you can never figure it out, because those votes are protected. Which makes sense if it weren't for the small fact that it is very easy to be fraudulent about votes that you can't account for. This is why they don't want voter ID in swing states. This is why They try to deny you a right to talk about this on YouTube, on Twitter, when you point out, wait a second, but there have been dead people voting. There has been voter fraud. Well, there hasn't been a lot of voter fraud. Well, we never know how much voter fraud there has been because we're not allowed to look into it. And in all fairness, even if we do look into it, there's fuck all to see because all votes are made in secrecy. So you can't really pull them back up. That's not true. There are paper ballots. Yeah, sure. Yeah, there are. But you can't easily get to them. You have to have a court order for it, and the courts tend to drag their heels. Now, if we look in the Netherlands, a lot of judges in the Netherlands are politically affiliated to what we can consider the left. It's bullshit to consider them left. It's better to consider them globalists, I guess. And this is true for most Western countries. Because most judges get to the position where they are because they have support. And somehow there is more strategic support on some sides of politics than there are of other sides. Now this can change, don't get me wrong. I mean, in the history we've seen that there have been nationalists supporting certain judges, etc., as well. I mean, we only have to go back 70 years, I think, in the United States. So I'm not saying it's always been the left. It's always been politicians, though, and that's the problem. See, there's a reason why the referenda in the Netherlands got cancelled. And it's not just the Netherlands that cancelled their referendum. Most countries don't really adhere to their referenda anymore. Why? Because during the referenda, people can actually say what they think. It's not what the politicians want them to say, it's what the people want to say. And why are most countries stopping the politicians in this? Why are most countries stopping the referenda, the people in this? Because it shows that the politicians don't care about the people. And they don't want you to realize that. I mean, it's fair enough that there are people saying that it's true, but they don't want you to be able to see why it is true. So yeah, there is a small problem in the Western world. And this is true in nearly all Western countries. We have politicians that sold out our country. And we don't know to whom they sold it out. And at the same time, these politicians try to make everything about splitting society. Oh, no, yeah, but you're just a racist when you say this. Oh, you're a bigot, that, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, though, no one is safe in these countries. Not even the ones they claim to be protecting. And somehow, we are not allowed to see this. So then the question comes back. Why do we still follow our politicians? Why do we still listen to them? And for that I grab back to the Milgram experiment, which was done in the 60s, I think, in America, that showed that people have a tendency to listen to the people in power, even though they might personally not agree. Everyone? No, not everyone, but 60% surely. And 60% is a majority? Yeah, normally I would say yes, 60% is a majority, but those 60% change. So sometimes person A will believe a politician and sometimes they won't, but then someone else will believe at that point in time. And because the media narrative is the way it is, no one ever learns of the people that disagree, because the people that disagree are they themselves. But they're always being told that they agree. Now, having this small talk, I'm like, yeah, maybe not only the politicians are to blame for this, maybe we also need to look at our media, because fair is fair. In Europe, we have now been talking about how the vaccine of AstraZeneca isn't safe, because a bunch of people got nasty side effects. Some people actually died of the side effects. And yeah, I know this to be true. I hate that it's true, but I know this to be true. But in all fairness, it's not as deadly as Corona is. Then again, Corona isn't that deadly either. What I find more interesting is that before we started talking about the side effects of AstraZeneca, people started talking about side effects of Johnson & Johnson. We don't hear about that anymore because everything is now AstraZeneca. And there's a new contender to fight against the Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson grip on the vaccine market. That's Johnson from the Netherlands, who now too have some negative side effects. But we don't hear about the negative side effects of Pfizer anymore, and we don't hear about the negative side effect of Johnson & Johnson anymore. It's almost as if the media picks winners and losers. And yeah, indeed, Michael, the death count of BioNTech is 4 times as high, but AstraZeneca is British. Well, I didn't even know they were Swedish. I would put it all on the British part. Europe has been fighting the British because they demanded AstraZeneca to give them more vaccines, even though the British actually bought them. And they made a deal with AstraZeneca, and the Dutch and the Europeans, at that time didn't want to make that deal. And now that AstraZeneca has a working vaccine, all of a sudden they want to destroy it because they can't get it. It's not true, they can get it, but they can't get as much as they want, and therefore it must be bad. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't trust the vaccines of AstraZeneca either, nor do I trust the vaccines of any of the other vaccine makers. I don't trust a vaccine that's been made so fast. I'm sorry, everyone taking the vaccine, you have every right to do so, and I will hope as hard as I can that it will actually save you and all that. But I have the feeling that we are the guinea pigs on this vaccine because they didn't really test it that well. Well, it's been tested on 40,000 people. Yeah, no, it hasn't, because there hasn't been a long-term study for the side effects. But then again, what do I know? And yeah, I'm not really sure if it's just our politicians that are to blame for this. In all fairness, there's a good reason to claim that the media is part of this problem too. But how come we keep believing them? How come we keep allowing them to do this? I don't know. I'm really at a loss for words in this, because there is something seriously wrong in our Western world. Anyway, hi there, Morris. Long time no see, mate. Anyway, I have been rambling for a while, considering I'm all alone, and this topic is, in all fairness, pissing me off, so maybe I'm just going to call it quits. Anyone else have something interesting they want to talk about? If so, you're more than welcome to join me in Hangout. And if the side effects of steroling both male and female is true, the issue solves itself fast by Corona's witnesses all being vaccinated, and the rest of us can procreate. Yeah, who knows? I don't know. I simply don't know. Now, don't get me wrong. I really hope it works. I really hope people will be saved from waddy. But at the same time, I have a problem with a vaccine that is about as effective as not having a vaccine. Because according to most papers, the vaccine protects 90% of the cases. but we know that more than 90% of the people that get sick, not not infected, but actually sick with the coronavirus, 90% of them are going to be perfectly fine. When I say 90%, I should say 95% at least. How do I know it's 95%? Because it's less than 1% of the people who actually die. Now, if the vaccine would be so good that it would protect 99%, then still it's not good enough for me, because that still leaves 1%, which is roughly the death toll on this sickness anyway. Northern Ireland is, oh, ludicrous. You really have to join me here and talk to people about what you just said. That's a good point as well. But yeah, more people need to stand up and be counted, so to speak. There's something seriously wrong. We allow our politicians and our media to get away with the most interesting of lies, whilst at the same time we don't know anything. Anyway. Well, I'm going to wait a few seconds to see if anyone will join me in the stream. And if not, I'm going to call it quits, because, as I said, it's a depressing topic. Former Portuguese Prime Minister acquitted by a judge of most charges of corruption before the trial starts. Yeah, shit like that. It keeps happening time and time, over and over again. And if you mention how certain areas, hell, we have concentration camps in Europe again. We have concentration camps in Canada. Well, we don't call them concentration camps, but that's what they are. Places where we put people who we think should be kept away from society. Well, it's because of Corona. And in Canada, these aren't concentration camps. They're concentration hotels. Yeah, sure, whatever word you want to put on it. But are these people allowed to walk freely? No, they're not. Then it's not an hotel. I should stop doing this now. Dinner at a Thai restaurant. Okay, well, no one's. Oh, Ludacris said he might come and join me. Okay, now I'm going to give him a few seconds. I really hope he will, because the North Island situation is an interesting one. And it once again shows how strange the politics are. I'll not talk about the Northern Ireland thing one. I'll leave that to Ludacris. It's an interesting topic, though. Maybe it's interesting, more interesting than believing politicians. And there is Ludacris.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you doing, my friend?
Good, good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Just I started this topic and I'm like, I don't really want to talk about this because it pisses me off. I'm getting old. I'm not sure if I'm good at this anymore.
No, no, it's grand. It's grand. I just I'd add something to what you're saying. It might not be much, but
Well, go on
uh,
then.
okay. For those of you who might not be aware at the minute, there is another upsurge of unrest across the north,
Yeah.
and it's a combination of a lot of things. And I plan to make a video about it in the next day or so if I can get my head down to it. Um, but in a nutshell, it's basically one side of the population is being ignored at the at its detriment on behalf of the other side.
Yeah.
So in this case, it's the Protestant Unionist side is being ignored, and there's too many people listening to the um, nationalist Republican Catholic side,
Yeah.
and I'm speaking as a Northern Ireland Catholic.
Yeah, well, obviously, the fact that you're Catholic doesn't mean you're blind to the corruption going on.
No, but I'm just trying to put it out there in case someone says, "Oh, you're just a loyalist lackey." Um,
I wouldn't call you that.
no, I know you wouldn't, but the situation is there's been a lot of tension across everywhere with the lockdowns, except Sweden, of course. Um, everyone's feeling it, pressure, tension, a build up,
Yeah.
and Northern Ireland's not exactly in the past been showing itself great for restraint and stress release.
Yeah.
And it's come in combination with um, a lot of shall we say, problems with the Brexit negotiation of Northern Ireland.
Yeah. You want to
In
tell
that,
in a short what that problem was?
yes, the it's this is a very very simplistic breakdown, but basically everyone was trying to appease the Republicans and the IRA in the negotiations, saying there should be no hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And so they're saying, great, then we'll just put this border down the middle of the Irish Sea, so that Northern Ireland itself becomes annexed into some hybrid EU, non EU state, but has all the EU laws. And so that means that there are lots and lots of checks being done on stuff coming from the UK into Northern Ireland. So something traveling from England, Wales, Scotland direct into Northern Ireland. There are lots and lots of red tape and checks being put in there because we can't have the border at the border. We can't do these tax checks at the border. We have to do it outside of on the Irish Sea, which pushes all the expense and cost into Northern Ireland, and it's blocking goods and services from coming into Northern Ireland from the UK, which is Northern Ireland's main source of supply for lots of different products.
Yeah.
And so, because of this, the loyalists are feeling angry that they're being driven into United Ireland against their consent.
Yeah, and I never understood how
Sorry.
this. I never understood how this would happen because this is precisely what everyone said that was going to, because this is what Europe wanted, and the UK constantly said we won't have a hard border, and now they do.
Well, it's not a hard border per se, but it's a different. Um, Northern Ireland now has a different status to the UK or to the rest of the UK, which is upsetting everything within Northern Ireland. So people in Northern Ireland are getting unrest because the EU doesn't want something going into the Republic of Ireland.
Now, I don't really understand that.
Well, the reason that the border checks are at Belfast is so that to make sure that nothing can get into Northern Ireland that hasn't been EU approved, taxed, checked, certified, and to meet those checks, they're pumping in extra fees to ship things into Northern Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Because the argument is that if something is shipped to Northern Ireland from the UK and it doesn't meet the EU standards, what's to stop that from going across the border into the Republic and therefore causing panic and chaos within the EU?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I never understood why they had. I mean, the whole hard border thing between the EU and Northern Ireland is it's a farce. It's a political stunt.
Oh, they're using this as political football,
Yeah.
and they're purposely using it. And I don't think it's going to last. The only reason is because it hasn't been signed. The deal hasn't been signed. But as long as there's a potential deal, this is the situation at the minute. If there
Yeah.
was no deal, then the situation would be these checks wouldn't be necessary. These checks wouldn't be called for, and the EU countries would have to take care of the EU problem themselves, and not leave it to people in Northern Ireland.
Yeah. Makes you wonder where this is going to. And in all fairness, I mean, how many Catholics are still behind this all though? I mean, at one point, I can understand people wanting to have a reunited Ireland. I do. I'm not even going to talk about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I can understand people wanting it done.
The
But
Republican. Oh, sorry.
it seems to me now that it's Ireland causing the problems in North Ireland.
Well, Ireland's been used as a proxy by the EU, but to that extent, yes. Um, it was always a minority who were the Republicans, um, and my definition is the Republicans are the ones who want a united Ireland, who um, are are sympathetic or are part of the IRA, in league with Sinn Féin, who want the whole 32 counties. Um, the nationalist, which is the majority of the Catholics, uh, I think they're happy enough with the situation as is, as in being part of the United Kingdom, but as long as they're left alone and allowed to practice um, and not being hindered, they're happy enough with the situation. And then the other side, there's the loyalist community, the Protestant side. There's hardcore loyalists, unionists,
Uh-huh.
who want to remain part of the union no matter what. There are moderate unionists who see the benefit of being in Northern Ireland and cooperating with all sides. And there's also been those who've manipulated both sides to the benefit of themselves when it suits them.
Yeah, it's all politics. It's not about what's good for the people at all.
No, but the people at the minute, the loyalist side, has been showing a lot of violence in the past couple of days.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I found it really interesting that they're talking about lockdowns and blah de blah de blah in North Ireland, and then when someone from I think it was Sinn Féin that got buried, they had a big big group of people joining up, and no lockdown restrictions, and nobody cared. And then all of a sudden, people want to get up and protest something, and all of a sudden, it's not allowed because of the lockdown.
The situation was it was an IRA general who died, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I'm not in
Uh,
favor
seemed-
of people like that, but I understand that people. I mean, it's a conflict zone, so you have people in favor and you have people against. That part I
yeah,
can understand. But what I
yes.
don't understand is that they allow certain things from one group and not the other. It's the same
Well,
with the BLM protests. Oh, BLM can protest, but if you want to protest against corona lockdowns, obviously you're not allowed to protest. How dare you?
yes. The situation was that this higher up in the IRA uh, leadership died, and the second minister of Northern Ireland from Sinn Féin attended the funeral along with hundreds of others. And this was seen as the second minister should not have broken lockdown rules and got attended this funeral, and it almost brought down the Northern Ireland Assembly. And I think that there's a certain thought that the Unionist side might have been justified in bringing down the Assembly for that, but they chose not to, and they chose to kind of keep working. And the outcome of this is that after investigation, the second minister was found to have done no wrong by the police, and so they're not going to press any charges, which is infuriating people who were locked down for the past year, especially in the Protestant side.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It doesn't make sense that people allow this shit to happen constantly, though.
Uh, it it doesn't make sense, but there's no method of control of the population once they get. Northern Ireland has been a tense place for as long as I've been alive,
True.
uh, and it doesn't take much to set people off. But it's been but the politics of it all have been very, very one-sided. Um, since the Good Friday Agreement, there's a lot of loyalists who see it as Sinn Féin IRA have said for this agreement they are not going to attack us. Uh, we have to give them everything. We've got to let their um, comrades out of prison and give them amnesty. And we have to pay all this money into different funds. We've got to do all these different examinations of atrocities committed on behalf of the um, UK government and army on the people in Northern Ireland without reciprocal investigations into IRA attacks.
Uh huh.
And so it seems very one sided to the loyalist community. And, you know, and the reality is it's more complicated than that, and they have been getting things, but to a lot of people, it looks like all the benefits have gone to the to one side, to the detriment of their side, and they're tired of giving and giving and giving and not getting anything in return.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's been going on in the Western world, on a large scale, but mostly because of the corona and the Great Reset bullshit. But yeah, in Northern Ireland, it's been going on for far longer, and still there people believe in the politicians. For the life of me, I can't understand why, and maybe you can explain this being a Catholic, but I never understood why people in Northern Ireland had faith in Sinn Féin. Because at one point, they kept playing nice and they kept playing politics, which is a good thing because you want to be part of the talks. But at the same time, they didn't really stop being the IRA, even though they claim they have. They haven't. And that duplicity, I never understood that.
Um, It's because there's quite a lot of the Sinn Féin do quite a lot of things, make quite a lot of statements that are populist, so to speak. They are also extremely socialist communist in their rhetoric,
Yeah.
and so they give a lot of you know the standard socialist lines that attract lots and lots of people to their cause, even though people don't think these things through. And people say, "Oh, I'm a socialist," and they just think it means that I want people to you know have you know things. I want people to live life without constriction. So the social order supersedes financial greed, and therefore, you know, that in that view, that's my view of what socialism is, and they don't actually look into the true spirit of socialism, what it leads to. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It's the same stupidity you can see everywhere where people are now advocating that socialism is a good thing. They ignore all the negativity and pretend it's not there just because they really want it not to be there.
And then they push up the statement, "Oh, the this we are so opposite to the other side because we are not right wing. Right wing scary, right wing bad, and anyone who supports right wing should be taken out and shot." Basically, in that case, but in that case, they already have done that. So
Well, but yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Sinn Féin has never really distanced themselves from the because they call themselves the political branch. Yeah, I'm sorry, but you've never moved away from the violent.
no, and Jerry Adams has kind of stood up and says, "We've not gone away."
I don't understand how that's in any form acceptable, to be honest.
It's seen as a baton against the unionist loyalist side. Uh, we have, basically, it's a threat against the unionist loyalist side. If you don't do what we want, we're quite happy to revert to bombing you all back into oblivion. Um, so you may as well give us what we want, make life easier.
Now,
Um,
personally, I really enjoy people having their religious rights, and I mean, obviously, that's not the be all and end all of the Irish problem, but it seems to me that it's quite a large part of it. And it seems to me that if we look at Northern Ireland, because once in Northern Ireland, Protestants had the political power and the Catholics were second rate citizens, but it seems to have turned the other way around now. Well, maybe not Catholics and Protestants, but law abiding citizens and, well, socialists, really.
well, I'm gonna be try to be as balanced as I can here and say that there were quite a lot of barriers put up against the Catholic community in
Yeah,
Northern Ireland
there were.
up until relatively recently, and talking about the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so there was, and I'm going to say it, structural um, barriers put up by the powers that be against Catholics. It wasn't strictly against Catholics. There were also some branches of Protestantism that were trod on in exactly the same way. But the politicians in charge were playing one side against the other, and so the Catholics on one side and the Protestant groups that were treated exactly the same way on the other side were made to look at each other as enemies instead of seeing who was really causing the problems, which is kind of the politicians and the people in the businesses who were basically running things behind the scenes, hiring who they wanted, firing who they wanted, making sure people's names weren't on lists, so to speak.
Well, and I mean, in a way, I can understand people doing this. I mean, it's in group, out group mentality. And I'm not in favor of it, but that's what happens. So people who are of certain cultural group will obviously prefer people of their own political group to be part of it. Now, this is true for Catholics among Catholics and Protestants amongst Protestants, but it's not a religious thing as such. It was only marked as a religious thing because it was mostly a political thing, because it was pro Irish or pro staying part of the UK. And I never understood how. I mean, I can understand how people used history as a way to explain why certain things would happen. But I mean, I don't understand how people still see this as a North versus South thing. North Ireland versus Ireland, or North Ireland versus the UK thing, and not as a political scheme to be played by people who want nothing to do with the reality behind it, but are more interested in power. And you can see this by the fact that where once Protestants had political superiority, so to speak, but now it seems that the and not the Catholics, don't get me wrong, it's not the Catholics, but the people that claim to be Catholics, Sinn Féin, the IRA, they now have political power over the rest.
Well, to be fair, Sinn Féin and the IRA don't claim to be Catholics. They claim more atheist leanings now.
Yeah, because they're socialists.
Yes.
But the argument between the UK and Ireland had always been a faith argument. Hell, that's why Northern Ireland got started, because I think it was the Spanish that came to Ireland and started making people Catholic.
No, the people in Ireland were Catholic for centuries. We had Catholics in Ireland from about the 5th century. Well, they weren't Catholics; they were Christians from St. Patrick when it was 5th century.
Yeah.
And it wasn't strictly a Catholic Protestant thing, but that's the way the division appeared, so to speak. It's like I said, it's a very, very complex situation, and it takes years and years of study to even come close to understanding the background of the Northern Ireland situation, and so we can't do it in a stream like this.
Fair point.
But it was a gross oversimplification just to say, it's Catholics versus Protestants. But that's a simplification that most people can conceive of. The Republicans in the North have a fantasy of Ireland. The whole Céad Míle Fáilte, Shillelagh, throwing Irish people who are kind of a land of 1,000 welcomes, the 50 Shades of Green country, and it's all kind of fantasy, and they don't look at the reality of if Northern Ireland joined the Republic, the first thing that would happen is Sinn Féin would be destroyed, because their whole political mandate is you'd form United Ireland. Once United Ireland's formed, then what use is Sinn Féin? the Unionists would be the biggest voting bloc in the whole Ireland, in the whole island of Ireland, because they're not going to go anywhere.
Really, I didn't know that.
Um, well, basically, if you look at the Republic of Ireland, you get the five main groups, but nobody really likes any of the main parties. Um, you got Micheál Martin in Fianna Fáil, and the partial Prime Minister Taoiseach Leo Varadkar in Fine Gael, and you get Sinn Féin and three or four smaller parties. Um, and people have not been voting for them in great numbers, so they can't form a majority. That's one of the big problems that's been facing the political groups, is that people aren't voting for them, and so they can't really get majority seats, one party or another, even with coalitions. But people consistently vote for the Unionist Loyalist parties in Northern Ireland, and if they united with the Republic, they could be one of the strongest parties in the island.
Well, it might be a good defense against socialism then.
Possibly. But they also, immediately what would happen is after reunification of the island, everyone in the north would pay double the tax they're paying now. They'd lose all the benefits of the NHS, so no more free doctors, hospitals. They'd have to pay into the southern system like everyone else. And that's quite an expensive undertaking. You're talking about 70 euros per GP visit.
Well,
Um, so all the utility costs would double. The cost of fuel, electricity, because they'd be dealing with the Irish situation, and they'd also be ruled by Germany.
yeah. And that's probably not a good idea for anyone in the Western world, but that's Europe for the moment. It's a good thing to see France finally standing up against it, but I don't know.
Yeah. But the Republicans have this fantasy of United Ireland, just like the SNP have a fantasy of independent Scotland.
Uh-huh.
It's not a realistic vision. It's not a thought through vision, and it's just going to cause misery for lots and lots of people if it's followed through. Because if it is followed through, the Republic is going to become more decimated because of all the debt in Northern Ireland.
Well, it's well, it's just one of the other examples. I mean, there are plenty of examples like this. How politicians will tell you one thing, but reality is busy with something completely different. It's almost as if they would get their way. It'll not take long for people to be upset about that. But maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm getting old, Michael.
I'm getting younger. Um,
Okay, there is that.
um, yeah, so there has been a lot of violence sparking across Northern Ireland over the past week, and I disavow any violence. I think it's the wrong way to go, but I also think that partly it was inevitable because people are feeling disaffected,
Hmm.
and lots and lots of people are going to pop off over the next couple of months across the world if the lockdowns don't ease up.
Yeah.
Um, I also hope that this will kind of collapse the talks between the EU and the UK because the declaration hasn't been signed yet. So therefore, there's no tie to currently to the EU. So it ended up with no deal.
Yeah, lots of the mess in Europe is tied to the European Union, though. I mean, imagine Ireland would get united. How many people in Ireland would want to stay in the European Union?
Surprisingly, it's the Europhiles have been very, very good at propagandizing the place.
Yeah, but not so much in Northern Ireland.
Not in Northern Ireland, no. In Northern Ireland,
But those people
well,
all of a sudden have a voice then too.
yeah, but having said that, the Brexit vote in Northern Ireland was majority Remain, so that means quite a lot more people wanted to remain in the EU um, in Northern Ireland than wanted to leave. I'm not saying that that invalidates the whole Brexit deal
Yeah, but I'm
because Brexit was a vote for everyone got a vote for the whole United Kingdom and not sections of the United Kingdom.
uh-huh.
Uh, so there is a number of people who don't actually understand what the EU, what is happening in the EU, and are just seeing the money coming into their pockets from the green, kind of the green or the envelopes filled with cash coming into them from the EU, marked supported with funding by the EU, so to speak, and they believe, oh, the EU did all this, the EU did all that, and they don't look at the contribution of the UK to the EU to pay out that money. So
Yeah. And I'm wondering how far it'll go because, well, most of the problems going on in Northern Ireland, well, they're not caused by the EU, obviously not, but the EU is making it worse. How
yeah, but
long
that was,
till people will start realizing that?
people are slowly starting to understand that the EU is making the problems worse because I'm talking to some people who were heavy Remain voters who are even now saying, well, yeah, the EU does seem a bit it's looking a bit not good these times, and I'm saying, yeah, yeah, you could be. Yeah, yeah. I don't want to push them because they have to come to their conclusions by themselves, and but my viewpoint of the EU is that it's going to take a lot of people down with it when it goes, and it's going to go very quickly.
Yeah, once it really starts to fall down, it's going to take a lot of shit down. I hope it won't take too long because the longer it takes, the more painful it'll be. But that's my humble opinion. And that's not just
Well,
in Northern Ireland, that's true for the whole bloody continent.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, like the EU isn't doing themselves any favors by threatening different countries right now and creating the EU army, and it, they're doing a lot of authoritarian, draconian moves right now, which is making people stand up and take notice.
Yeah. Well, we need more of that. We need more people realizing what the fuck are these politicians doing? How are they trying to destroy our society? No, not so much how. Why are they trying to destroy our society?
Well, line their own pockets for the most part, but
Yeah, that's probably true. That's
uh,
probably true.
there's a friend of mine who believes that no one goes into politicians to help anyone else except themselves.
Yeah.
That's a very cynical view. I don't exactly share it myself because I've known some politicians who do appear genuine to me.
Well, I
They're
mean,
very rare,
I
but
mean,
they do exist.
they appear genuine until something happens and they get called out.
I've still seen some politicians who don't back down and stick to their position.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, you can say what you want about Ian Paisley. He didn't really back down from a fight.
in all
Um,
fairness, I don't know Ian Paisley that well, so I mean, I'm not that um, um, inclined to know what's going on with current politicians in India and Northern Ireland. It's just a few things that I did notice. For example, how a lot of the riots, they're talking about how it's uh, Protestants against Catholics again, or at least that's how I saw it framed in the media. And I'm like, when you
no,
actually read the story, it's not about Protestants or Catholics. It's about authoritarians and people having a problem with the double standard within those authoritarians.
and it's also not being directed against the Catholics at the minute. It's being directed against the police
Yeah.
specifically.
Well, it's
So,
directed at the state.
uh, yes, but the police are the front line of that, taking the brunt. And so they've had 55 injured
Yeah. Yeah.
officers, and I hope that they are doing okay.
I hope so too.
Um, it just, um, but I brought up something in the in 1999, whenever they had just brought in the Good Friday Agreement terms to Northern Ireland, or some of them. They didn't really implement all of them, which would have been more fair. Um, the One of the big things was that they ripped up the RUC, the Royal Ulster Constabulary,
Uh huh.
and they basically fired a lot of police officers because they were Protestants, and then hired a lot of Catholics because they were Catholics
Yeah.
into the police force. And they were saying, "Oh, this will solve everything."
Yeah, because now all of a sudden you're making one group arbitrary more important than the other group. And why are those two groups fighting? Because one group found the other group is arbitrary, put over them, so now they put themselves over them. And I'm like, this is not the answer.
No, I raised questions about that at the time, and I was saying, well, why is it justified that you're getting rid of these people because they're Protestants? I know that the police um, population can't be massively over exceeding. There's a budget, so to speak.
Uh huh.
But the idea was that if we make the police service representative of Northern Ireland, at that time it was about 60% Protestant, 40% Catholic. If they made it representative, then that would solve a lot of the problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it has done some good. I'm not going to deny that, because you got people from the Catholic community who can try and talk to, um, you know, people in control of the IRA, so to speak. And the ones in the Protestant community can talk to the ones in control of the RUC. They, so they can try and negotiate some things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But that's the thing, though. People want safety, and for safety, they are willing to uh, lose freedoms. And in the end, you won't have safety and you won't have freedom. This is kind of
No,
what's happening in Northern Ireland, though, and this is why people are standing up, because they're noticing that they're losing their their rights and their freedom, and it has nothing to do. Obviously, it really doesn't have anything to do with the whole north-south situation. This has more to do with the COVID. How do you call it? Double standard. Different word I was looking for, but I can't find it. I mean, the guys attacking the police, they're doing it because they had enough of the double standard.
I'd say that exacerbated the situation to a great degree, but there's always there are lots and lots of areas of Protestants that were also under supported in Northern Ireland, and they were seeing equal levels of poverty and disparity
Yeah, because it
to
had
the
nothing to do with nothing to do with Protestants and Catholicism. It had to do with authoritarians and corruption.
Yes. Ironically, one of the methods used to put the Catholics down in Northern Ireland ended up backfiring against the Protestant population. I might have mentioned that before, but one of the biggest industries in Northern Ireland was the shipbuilding industry, Harlem and Wolff
Uh-huh.
shipbuilding, and yeah, that's where they made the Titanic and the sister ships, and the workers there were all hired by they were all Protestant workers. So there was vast numbers of people building the ships, and they're all in the Protestant community. There was a lot of nepotism. You just had to get your uncle, come in with your uncle one day whenever you were 16 and say, your uncle would say, this is my nephew, uh, get him set up somewhere, and they had a job for life.
Yeah.
And basically that excluded the Catholics because the Catholics didn't have any contacts in there and wouldn't get any contacts in there, and so they were excluded from the major industry in Northern Ireland.
Which, in all fairness, is a justified claim to say that this is a problem. This is part of why this is a huge issue.
Yes. The other side of that is that the Catholics then went heavily into education, while the Protestant communities, they went into boat building with bare minimum education, maybe a GCSE. The Catholic community stormed into the universities
Uh-huh.
and took the universities by storm, first class honors across all the universities they went into. Um, my family included. In the 60s, whenever they first started making they had free university placements, and the Catholics ran to those and started getting top jobs, top education, and it's kind of they excelled across the place. And the problem came whenever the shipbuilding industry collapsed
Uh-huh.
in Northern Ireland. That meant that all those uneducated Protestants, all of a sudden, a vast number of them had no jobs and no prospects,
Yeah.
and
So
that
so you
caused
went
a lot
from
of
the
problems.
oppression of one group to the oppression of the other group.
Yes, well, the other group felt bitter against the Catholics who they seen succeeding in society. So it's not like the Catholic population wasn't trying to control, oppress the Protestant community.
Uh-huh.
They were just working. They were just kind of doing jobs and improving in the jobs and getting higher qualifications. But it
Yeah.
did cause a lot of resentment on the other side because they're saying, "Why are all these people getting these jobs?" And It was causing, that's another side of the equation that hasn't been looked at. So there are lots and lots of areas that, due to the drop of the jobs market, are really, really poor, and they're not being looked at.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a complicated situation in Northern Ireland, and no one person has the answer as opposed to all the information. They don't even know the question to answer to get the proper answer.
In all fairness, though, I can't blame them for that. I mean, what is the proper answer? Either you have to admit that the nepotism has to stop, which I guess both of us can easily agree on. But if you do that, you can't play people against each other anymore. And that's the whole thing. They're constantly playing people against each other, whether people realize it or not.
Yeah, the businesses were doing quite a lot of this. They would hire one population, say they'd hire unionists for a while, until the Catholic population would drop its prices for hire, and so they'd get rid of all the unionists and start hiring the Catholics, and that would force the unionists to, because we need a job, so we'll take even less money than the Catholics will, and
Mm-hmm.
so the business says okay, and they get rid of all the Catholics.
Yeah.
So instead of giving people reasonable wages, they were basically dragging it to the bottom by playing each community off against each other.
Yeah. It's But then again, that's what's been going on in the West now everywhere. I mean, it's the same thing all over again. This is what's been going on for the last at least 100 years in most of the Western countries. It's sickening and interesting at the same time to see how this plays out in Ireland and Northern Ireland. Because I'm not saying it's connected to how it's going everywhere else, but it's showing the same patterns. It's just more clearly.
Well, there is a conspiracy theory going out, that a lot of things in Northern Ireland are contrived as experiments by the British government on a population. So, what would happen if we did this in a population? And so they do that, and they see what happens. And so,
Yeah, it seems to be the case.
I don't have any evidence of that, but there's quite a lot of shall we say, coincidences that seem very dubious to be
Yeah.
coincidences.
No, I totally agree with that. And this is something that not too long ago I started noticing, and I'm like, wait a second. The 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 motives may not be the same. The political goals are. And that's yeah. Anyway, thank you for clarifying why we shouldn't trust politicians by pointing out the Northern Ireland situation.
Well,
Because
like I said, yeah, I'm gonna try and make a video about this. I probably just spoiled it all, but I'm gonna try and make a video about this in the next few days from inside Northern Ireland about what's happening.
yeah, yeah. Well, I look forward to it. I mean, I can pretend to know what I'm talking about, but you actually live it.
Yeah.
So there is that. And
Well, yeah, I don't claim to know everything about Northern Ireland, but I have a perspective.
yeah, yeah. And I do appreciate you sharing it with us. Anyway, it's just a small group today. I really have to start making more videos and make this channel become more alive. just busy with trying to keep standing and all that. So
Sure.
I'd like to thank everyone for that was listening and that joined us. Thank you for joining us, and thanks Ludacris for coming and talking about this, because yeah, it's an important topic, and as I said, it seems that a lot of the political problems we are having in the Western world are very similar to the situation in Northern Ireland. Even though the motivations behind it might be different, I'm not sure if they are, but they might be. They seem very similar, to say it again.
Yeah, the outcome is going to be the same.
Yeah. Anyway, do you have any final words you want to share with the good people that listen in?
Nos perituri mortem salutamus.
Right. I'll pretend that I know what he just said.
Now that's the Latin for we who are about to die salute you.
Yeah. As I said, I won't pretend.